We don't know what love is. Love is an indispensable part of human existence that binds individuals together in life-altering ways. It is an experience shared across the globe by all people, regardless of age, sex, religion, or culture, and has been at the forefront of poetry, theater, music, movies, and all other artistic expressions for hundreds of years. Yet today, it seems that young people are finding themselves less and less interested in pursuing love than ever before. A study released in 2022, based on the 2021 Canadian census, found that while more than 2/3, 68% of people aged 25 to 29 were in a couple in 1981, this was the case for just under 2/5, 39% of people in this age group in 2021. In fact, I'm certain that you know people who have given up on getting into relationships altogether or are finding it extremely difficult to find the right partner. So, what's the cause of this declining interest in love among young people, and how does our modern understanding on the topic compare to that of people from prior generations? First, I want to point out the definitions that come up when you search up the term love on Google. The following definitions are presented from Oxford Languages. As a noun, love is first defined as an intense feeling of deep affection, and second as a great interest and pleasure in something. As a verb, it is first defined as feeling affection for someone, and second as to like or enjoy very much. Notice here that the definition seems to imply that love is something which we feel or experience as an emotion. Thereby, it only has to do with the chemicals buzzing around inside of our brains in reaction to the presence of another individual. Using the same logic, we could compare the feeling of love to the feeling of thirstiness. When I've just finished running on the treadmill or had a hard day of physical labor, I experience the feeling of thirstiness, and as a result must drink water in order to satisfy my feeling of thirstiness. I proceed to pour myself a glass of water and drink. However, no matter how thirsty I was when I first hopped off the tread or finished my hard day at work, once I have drank water and quenched my thirst, I become entirely uninterested in the substance. The chemicals in my brain are pleased with the reintroduction of water into my system and thereby dissipate, only to re-emerge once more when I become thirsty again. Now, let's apply this same feeling-based logic to love. Say, for example, that I'm swiping my way through a social media dating app. Eventually, I'll come across an individual whom I find myself interested in. Whether it is their looks or their hobbies that interest me does not really matter at the moment. What does matter is that feeling deep down inside me that tells me to act. And so, I swipe right. It doesn't matter how many people you swipe right on during a day. Eventually, you're going to match with somebody, and you'll begin conversing with them over the messaging platform of your choice. And that feeling you initially had when you first swiped right may compound or it may diminish. If it diminishes, no problem. You just cut off communication with that person. But if instead it compounds, you may desire to meet them face to face, and that desire to meet them causes you to ask them out. Let's say your first meeting with this person goes well. Let's say that your feelings increase for them and your desire also grows to get closer to this person. So long as their desire also grows to become closer with you, you go out again. You continue to spend more and more of your free time with this person because they make you feel good. They make you feel happy, and they make you feel that certain way which is only describable with the word love. Now, let's assume that love is merely a feeling, and that after 6 months of communication and dating, that feeling dissipates, and you find yourself disinterested with this person. What if you've been together for 5 years? What if you've been married for 15 years and you have kids with this person? What now? Well, it seems to me that in following through with the Oxford Languages definition of love, we should be able to leave the relationship, or wait until those feelings eventually resurface again. In the same way that we keep water readily available to drink in the event we become thirsty again, we can keep our lovers close, so that if we feel like we're in love again, we have them near to satiate our desires. But as you all know, water's not the only thing which we drink. It may be the only thing we need to drink, but there are a plethora of other options available to the modern individual. In fact, if we tire of drinking water altogether, we could just stop. We could just drink it in its carbonated form. Or we could drink juice, or we could drink coffee, or soda, or alcohol, or any other kind of drink available on the market. So why not apply the same logic with love? Why should I limit myself to the love of one person when there are so many to choose from? If I become tired of loving someone, like I might become tired of drinking water, and I want to spice up my life, who's to say that I can't leave that person and go find someone else to love? Isn't it well known that feelings naturally come and go, and that there's no telling how and when they'll arrive and leave us? Well, it seems clear to me that the older generations are taking up this thought pattern, as nearly half of all marriages end in divorce nowadays, and the number of common law partnerships has increased by 450% since 1981. And what's one of the greatest benefits of a common law partnership, you might ask? Well, it's that there's no need to file a bunch of specific paperwork in order to dissolve a relationship. In essence, a common law partnership allows you to have all the benefits of a marriage without the commitment. It allows you and your partner to play house. To me, this seems to suggest that modern people believe that once your feelings run out, you should be able to just leave your current relationship and find somebody else to love. This right here is what I believe to be the key of this whole disinterest in love among young people. We aren't committed to one another. We're scared that our partner is going to leave us. We're scared that our partner won't feel like they're in love with us anymore. And we don't want to go through the trauma of a breakup. All of this is so clearly being modeled to us by our parents' generation. And so instead, as you would expect to see from this sort of loss of love, we see this rising trend in situationships, in one-night stands, in casual dating. All of which, if we're being honest with ourselves, none of us really want. Now, I'd like to compare this with how people from the past viewed the subject of love, and I'm going to do so by exploring 3 separate poems written in different parts of the world. Obviously, this is not going to be conclusive to, what everybody thought about love, as only those who would have been able to write would have been able to record their thoughts. But we can assume that these people were probably fairly well educated and had a good understanding of what their culture believed about love. The first poem we're going to examine is an excerpt out of the biblical poem, Song of Solomon. Set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm, for love is strong as death, jealousy is cruel as the grave. Its flashes are flashes of fire, a most vehement flame. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can floods drown it. If a man offered for love all the wealth of his house, it would be utterly scorned. This piece was written by Solomon, who was king of Israel between 971 to 921 BC, and so can give us some insight into what the ancient Israelites would have thought about the topic of love. I want to draw your attention to the middle of the poem and the comparison of love to a flame. Solomon writes that its flashes are flashes of fire, a most vehement flame. I'd like for you to imagine yourself seated beside a warm fire. A steady flame burns and consumes the wood, which is being used to stoke it up. Sometimes the fire jumps in unexpected flashes of light which brighten the area you are seated in, only to plunge you back into the dark when they die down. To keep the fire alive, we need to keep adding logs to the flame that never ceases to consume it. The fire we use for a host of things, whether it be to light the darkness, to warm us up, or to cook with. All things which are necessary for our survival. Now let's extrapolate meaning out of that. When the fire flashes, as Solomon indicates that it does, these are the outward expressions of love that captivate the attention of all who are near. The flashes could be said to be the feeling of being in love, and the actions that ensue because of them. But as we all know, the fire is not continuously flashing brilliantly. Sometimes only a steady flame lingers in front of you. And note, the flashes of the fire are not love itself, but it is the fire itself that is love. This I take to mean that Solomon believes that love has something to do with feeling, but is not feeling in and of itself. In order to keep this fire of love alive, we must continue to add wood to the fire, and in love, that wood is ourselves. We need to continue to offer ourselves up for each other by virtue of self-sacrifice to keep that fire of love alive. For each couple, this looks differently. For some, it might be picking up the kids from school, even if you don't want to. For another, it's working overtime so that you can catch up on stressful bills. For another, it might be a simple thing like doing the dishes without even complaining about it. Solomon does not see love as only these brilliant flashes and passionate displays of affection. Love is not entirely about a feeling, although sometimes it might involve one. But love is selflessly giving yourself up to one another for each other's benefit. To keep this fire of love alive, you need to commit to the fire. You need to continue to stoke the flames by continuing to offer yourself up for your partner. And just like with any fire, you'll reap its benefits. Solomon adds to his fire metaphor by writing, "Many waters cannot quench love, neither can floods drown it." Regardless of external circumstances, so long as fuel is added to the fire of love, it will never go out. Next, I want to look at a poem entitled Tune of Heavenly Home, written by Wei Zhuang, who was born in Hunan Country, China, 836 AD. Outing in spring, almond flower petals in the air. The wind lent them my wing to adorn my hair. Whose youth is that over there, perfectly handsome and fair? I intend to condescend myself, offering him my hand for life, and then, even if I be cast aside in the end, there is no cause for me to repent. I think this poem, more so than the previous one, explicitly says that love is not a feeling. Now, it certainly starts there. Zhuang writes, "Whose youth is that over there, perfectly handsome and fair?" Perhaps this is that initial attraction and feeling which draws an individual out of themselves to act and pursue another with the goal of being in a relationship. Anyone who's been in one before can attest to how strong those initial attractions are and how they can cause you to act in new and unique ways you never saw yourself acting in before. But for Zhuang, it doesn't stop there. He goes further by writing, "I intend to condescend myself, offering him my hand for life, and then..." It seems to me that Zhuang believes that love starts out as a feeling, but then transforms itself into a commitment. In love, one must be willing to condescend yourself, to step below your own dignity, and humbly offer yourself up for another, offering your hand to another for life. Zhuang follows this by writing, "Even if I be cast aside in the end, there's no cause for me to repent." There's no need for me to feel or express any regret or remorse in offering my hand, my help, myself to the person that I love. A modern person might look at this and believe it to be absurd. Why should I offer my hand to someone for life when they could take full advantage of me and my possessions? Why should I feel no regret or remorse if I'm cast aside? To these questions, I believe Zhuang would answer, "You never knew what love was to begin with." Now, before we draw any conclusions about what people used to think about love, let's just look at one more poem written by William Shakespeare, Sonnet 116. "Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever-fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, through rosy lips and cheeks, within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved." I mean, here it is. Right at the beginning of the poem, Shakespeare makes it extremely clear that love does not change. Love is constant in the face of alteration. People change. Time marches on ever forward. You might not even recognize the person you once fell in love with many years ago. But love does not change. It cannot be removed. Feelings can be removed. Love cannot. So in this way, love is not entirely based on a feeling. In fact, true love stares temptation in the face. temptation to leave, to love someone else, to find someone to reignite those feelings within you, those feelings we associate with love. But true love is never shaken. In fact, it does not alter with time, but instead bears it out to the edge of destruction. Does this sound like Shakespeare's describing a feeling? Does it sound like he's describing a Disney movie? Does it sound like he's describing the hundreds of reality TV shows we see nowadays about love? I'd wager not. I think this lengthy quote by one of my favorite authors, creator of the Chronicles of Narnia, C.S. Lewis, sums up perfectly how modernity has equated love with feelings. Being in love is a good thing, but it is not the best thing. There are many things below it, but there are also things above it. You cannot make it the basis of a whole life. It is a noble feeling, but it is still a feeling. Now, no feeling can be relied on to last in its full intensity, or even to last at all. Knowledge can last, principles can last, habits can last, but feelings come and go. In fact, whatever people say, the state called being in love usually does not last. If the old fairy tale ending, they lived happily ever after, is taken to mean they felt for the next 50 years exactly as they felt the day before they were married, then it says what probably never was nor ever would be true, and would be highly undesirable if it were. Who could bear to live in that excitement for even 5 years? What would become of your work, your appetite, your sleep, your friendships? But of course, ceasing to be in love does not mean ceasing to love. Love in this second sense, love as distinct from being in love, is not merely a feeling. It is a deep unity, maintained by the will and deliberately strengthened by habit, reinforced by, in Christian marriages, the grace which both partners ask and receive from God. They can have this love for each other, even at those moments when they do not like each other, as you love yourself even when you do not like yourself. They can retain this love even when each would easily, if they allowed themselves, be in love with someone else. Being in love first moved them to promise fidelity. This quieter love enables them to keep the promise. It is on this love that the engine of marriage is run. Being in love was the explosion that started it. Loving someone is an extremely difficult task, and I'm not even going to pretend to have an ounce of understanding what it's like to be in one of those difficult relationships where it feels like your partner is just taking and taking and taking, and you're not getting anything out of it. But I think we've lost the definition of love in modernity. We conflate, feelings of joy and happiness associated with someone we have romantic relations with love. We confuse being in love for love itself, but they're not the same thing. Love is a choice. Love is not blind, but it is seeing. Seeing in the most real sense. Love is choosing and seeing this person who has needs and attending to them day in and day out, never ceasing. Life is difficult. We're constantly being beaten down by the requirements of our jobs and bills that we have to pay. Wouldn't it be nice to have somebody to do all that with? Someone who wouldn't leave you, regardless of the kind of person you are? A terrible wretch at that, but aren't we all? That's why I'd like to leave you with this new definition of love, or perhaps it's actually a very old one. But it is this: to love is to will the good of another. This is a very simple definition, and as we've seen, love is anything but simple, but I think it's a good starting point. In your relationships, try to apply this logic. Try to will your partner's good. This does not mean, just letting them do whatever they want. And it doesn't mean just attending to their never-ending needs. What it means is doing what's best for them in any given circumstance. Sometimes that's going to mean saying yes. Sometimes that's going to mean saying no. When you first apply this logic, your partner might even be upset with you. But don't worry. Love is not just about feeling. It's about willing your partner's good.